we come together to acknowledge a painful chapter in our history, one that for too long was hidden, unspoken, or ignored. We stand here now to tell the truth. Yes, truth. That was the main goal of the Maryland Lynching, Truth and Reconciliation Committee that was established in 2019 by House Bill 307. And we are fortunate today to have with us House Speaker Jocelyn Penna Melnick, who was one of the key sponsors of that legislation. The commission was authorized to research cases of racially motivated lynchings and hold public meetings and regional hearings where a lynching of an African American by a white mob had been documented. Currently, evidence reflects approximately 40 of such cases in Maryland. The marker we are here to dedicate today represents more than a moment in time. It represents a life, a person. James Taylor from Pondtown, Maryland, right across the bridge, the Chester River Bridge, whose dignity and humanity were taken through an act of racial terror. And while we cannot undo that injustice, we can refuse to be silent or let silence have the last word. Today is about remembrance. It's about honoring the victim and recognizing the trauma that was carried by families and communities across generations. It is also about accountability, about facing our shared history with honesty and courage. Today isn't just about the past. It's also about the present and the future. By placing this marker, we are making a commitment that we will remember, that we will teach, and that we will continue the work of justice so that such acts of hatred never happen again. We are grateful to all of you who have made this dedication possible. I won't go through all of the names. The list of individuals, partners, and organizations are listed on the back of the program. Our efforts ensure that this story will be told and that James Taylor's life will be remembered. As we begin the program, let us do so with open hearts, grounded in truth, guided by compassion, and committed to justice. Thank you. We will now hear from Larry Wilson, who's the former board of the Sumner Hall, former president of the Sumner Hall Board of Directors.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, this has been a long journey for 7 years, getting to this place where we're at now. And I'm originally from Kent County, born and raised, and to learn of this during this time was really shocking to me. I think to me, the main thing that I get from it, we got to teach the young people where everything is at all our history, what we need to do, and fight for what is right and wrong. Because right now, the way we're headed the wrong way. And it's been a pleasure working with everyone and everyone that supported us. And continue to keep us in prayer that we can keep moving on. Thank you.
We will now have the invocation by Reverend Robert N. Brown Jr. of Bethel AME Church here in Chestertown.
Good afternoon. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, humbly and respectfully, we call on your holy and righteous name. You are God and God all by yourself. Holy and righteous is your name. We take and make time to talk to you in prayer because we need your help. Because you are our creator, the God of all flesh. Psalm 139, 1 through 4 states, King David said, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down sittings and mine uprisings. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. O Lord God, because you created us, therefore know us better than we know ourselves. You know that we are here not only racially mixed, but also with mixed emotions. We are angry, confused, hurt, vengeful, embarrassed, heartbroken about the lynching that happened just outside. Without a trial, not by law enforcement, but by a lynch mob. Yet when this African-American man, James Taylor, was asked, was he guilty? Of the rape of the young lady from Kennedyville, he responded to the Sun paper reporter shortly before being hung, and I quote, "No, sir, I am an innocent man, and I am not afraid to say so, even while I am expected to meet my God in a few minutes. Lord God, we surrender and submit to you. Help us to minister to each other and heal our wounds of racism, placism, classism, injustice, prejudice, heartache, and fear. We cannot erase the past, nor forget it, but we can write a new future, Lord, with your leadership and guidance. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King stated, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Dear Lord God, work in us and through us to expose the lies and shine the truth. For you said in your word that we are the light of the world. Dr. King also said, the time is always right to do what is right. The time is now. Lord, help us to do what is right starting today. Mahatma Gandhi said, change yourself. You are in control. Lord, whatever each of us desire in ourselves or in others, let it begin in us first. Gandhi also said, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. Lord, your joy is our strength. Help us to use it to forgive. Finally, Gandhi said, love is the strongest force the world possesses. Lord, help us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Beginning today, let the healing begin. In your name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Brown. We will now have a selection by Yvette Henson, who's the first vice president at Sumner Hall, and accompanied by Ronald Demby.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that host all dressed in white. God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like the Israelite. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. Looks like the band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Look over yonder, what do you see? God's gonna trouble the water. The Holy Ghost is coming at me. God's gonna trouble the water. If you know, believe I've been redeemed, God's gonna trouble the water. Just follow me down to join the stream. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Thank you so much for that, Yvette and Ron. Thank you. We will now hear from, we'll have a community remembrance with Mia Taylor, project manager for Equal Justice Initiative.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia Taylor. I'm a project manager from Equal Justice Initiative, which is also referred to as EJI, which is based in Montgomery, Alabama. As a law office, the Equal Justice Initiative has been dedicated to representing clients sentenced to death and condemned to die in prison. We challenge inhumane conditions of confinement, and we work to expose racial bias in the criminal justice system, and we've been doing that for over 30 years. This work has provided a firsthand view of the many ways that our nation's current era of mass incarceration is deeply rooted in America's history of racial injustice and has inspired us to launch a project documenting and memorializing the eras of enslavement, racial terror lynching, and segregation. That project has yielded research and public education materials, including reports, videos, interactive websites on the history of racial terror, lynching, and segregation, and a history of racial injustice calendar, which I believe may be here today for you guys to take at the end. along with 4 groundbreaking legacy sites in Montgomery, Alabama. We believe it is critical for communities across the country to do difficult work of unearthing and confronting their own histories of racial injustice, while exploring that how that history continues to shape the present. We are honored to support community memorialization work through the Community Remembrance Project, which is organized at the county level. A meaningful aspect of this work is the opportunity for individuals like yourselves to connect with members of your local community and to examine personal connections to the legacy of racial terror. EJI's Community Remembrance Project supports Coalition in their efforts to memorialize documented victims of racial violence throughout history. Our history marker projects erect narrative markers like the one we are unveiling today in public locations describing the devastating and widely unknown violence that once took place in these locations. Since 2015, EJI has worked with over 200 coalitions across the country. The work of these communities is honored in an exhibit at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. These projects and the other engagement efforts help communities to understand the truth of our nation's history of injustice, to recognize the experiences of Black community members across generations, and to expose the ways in which the history of racial injustice continues to impact communities today. EJI has now documented nearly 6,500 racial terror lynchings in America between 1865 and 1950. Thousands more Black people have been killed by white mob lynchings whose deaths may never be discovered. Black men, women, and children were pulled from their homes, from jails, and from their places of work to be beaten, tortured, and lynched by white mobs. This violence was made worse by the failure to hold anyone accountable for those atrocities. Racial terror lynchings harmed whole communities and fueled bigotry and violence. It caused mass migrations of Black people to other states who fled for their safety, and they had to leave behind relatives, businesses, properties, and more. Our country has been shaped by this history, and today you have come together in a powerful way to address and confront the damage created by it. EJI celebrates the work of the many dedicated people who advanced this project and made the erection of the marker possible. We are very grateful for your dedication, perseverance, and desire to bring people together to teach them about our shared history. We are very proud of the Community Remembrance Project and honored to work alongside the community members in this county who are taking on the challenging and necessary work of telling the truth about our history and building a future rooted in justice. On behalf of EJI, we thank you for the extraordinary work that has taken place in this county to reckon with our nation's tragic history of racial injustice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. We appreciate you being here with us. We will now hear the Maryland context from Amy Millen, who is president of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. Hi, Amy.
Because there is a path to recovery and reconciliation when we tell the truth about our history in public, acknowledging racial harm in public spaces is a critical first step in racial reconciliation. Those opening words are found on the Community Remembrance page of Equal Justice Initiative's website. They help to frame today's ceremony and the work of lynching memorial projects across Maryland. Good afternoon. As introduced, I'm Amy Millen, and I'm the president of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, as well as a commissioner on the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Thank you to the members of the James Taylor Coalition, as well as to the Kent County community at large. Your commitment to truth-telling and putting voice to Mr. Taylor's full story is super important. Born just 4 years after Maryland abolished slavery, Mr. Taylor became the 22nd of 38 documented victims of racial terrorism in Maryland between the years 1854 and 1933. As has been already stated, his murder took place 134 years ago today. Mr. Taylor's story, a part of our past, has informed the lives of his descendants and shaped this community. Today's Justice Day program provides an opportunity to disrupt patterns of silence, racism, and denial. It is an opportunity to tell a once suppressed history. What might feel like small acts, collecting soil for James Taylor in 2022, hosting community conversations, taking a bus trip with students to Montgomery, Alabama, and holding today's marker ceremony are huge. It takes courage. It takes courage to act. This activism and the coming together into community is a way of remembering individuals who have been wronged. It offers us an opportunity to pause. It is an act of naming the truth of an unjust history, and it provides a time to learn, to grow our collective awareness, and to expand the space and opportunity for repair. The act of collecting soil for Howard Cooper, a 15-year-old boy in Baltimore County in 2018, for example, was the impetus for the founding of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, which is anchored by a drumbeat, truth first. We must know the truth and acknowledge past harms. This is the first step. From that 2018 soil collection, the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project and the affiliated coalitions are now involved in 14 of the 17 counties where a documented lynching has occurred. Earlier conversations have begun in neighboring Queen Anne's and Caroline's counties. 21 community remembrance soil collections have been held across the state, and the historic marker for Mr. Taylor is Maryland's 11th marker, memorializing 19 of the state's racial terror victims. In addition to advocating for the public acknowledgement, honoring, and dignifying the lives of the victims, the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project researches and documents their histories. The research is publicly accessible on the MLNP Digital Archive and has been included as testimony at public hearings presented by the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is the only such commission in the country. The public hearing for Kent County was held in December of 2024 in partnership with Caroline and Queen Anne's counties. The commission's final report, which includes 84 recommendations for reparations to redress the ongoing impact of racial terror lynchings on Black communities throughout the state, was presented to the governor and legislature this past December and is also available for the public. Those 84 recommendations, which are based on a legal justification and foundation, are grouped into 9 overarching categories. I'm not going to walk you through 84 recommendations right now. The first, an apology and acknowledgement of responsibility by the state of Maryland, material reparations and recommendations, criminal justice recommendations, community healing, educational recommendations, mental health recommendations, symbolic, media recommendations, and the 9th, funding, implementation, and monitoring recommendations. A joint resolution was introduced into the regular session this past spring, calling for that apology and acknowledgement, the very first of those recommendation buckets. Unfortunately, that joint resolution stalled and it was not moved forward. The James Taylor Justice Coalition was one of several coalitions around the state to submit testimony in support of that bill. While the commission is sunsetting in June, there is a commitment to see the bill return to the floor, along with a number of other proposed and drafted bills. In addition, there are other actions of truth-telling taking place in Maryland. The recently established Reparations Commission, as well as the Commission on the House of Reformation and Instruction for Colored Children, are but 2 examples. They have also been supported by the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project and affiliated coalitions. The work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project would not have been possible without county-affiliated partners and volunteers. In words drawn from the cover letter of the Commission's final report, I quote, "From the moment the Commission was established in 2018, we have understood that this work was not ours alone. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, community historians, descendants, educators, faith leaders, activists, and countless unsung heroes, unsung truth-tellers who refused to let silence be the final word. Their courage, persistence, and love for justice guided every step of this journey. It is to them that the 38 known victims of racial terror lynching in Maryland and those victims of racial terrorism whose names are lost to time for now, that we dedicate this work, end quote. I just could not agree more with that statement, and I want to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to Kent County for the work that you are doing in this important space. But I have to ask why. Why is it important to have these reminders of our past, to conduct research, hold hearings, and record stories? To have the audacity to consider a memorial for all 38 documented victims, in addition to historic markers located throughout the state? It is to ensure that the victim stories are never forgotten, to ensure that the state's history is spoken and learned, to remind us to never repeat the atrocities that have come before. Dorothy Brown, a nationally recognized scholar in the areas of race, class, and tax policy, stated, "Building a different America requires a reckoning with our past." In 1892, Mr. Taylor was not provided the opportunity to speak his truth in a court of law. He was a victim of racial terror lynching during a period in the United States when the rate of lynching significantly rose as redemption and Jim Crow segregation expanded. State and local governments, as well as institutions such as the Baltimore Sun and the judicial systems, found it easier to condone the crimes and for the members of the public, mobs, to act outside of the law. As genealogist Brett Tyler of Heritage Associates testified at the Commission's institutional hearing in April of last year, the contemporary media went out of its way to justify lynchings, to dehumanize the lynch victims. Today's ceremony is a courageous act to humanize Mr. James Taylor, and by extension, all racial terror victims in the state. It is an urgent call to pay attention to our history, past, present, and future. As such, remembrance markers serve as visual reminders so that we do not repeat those harms of the past. They are first steps towards community acknowledgement of harms done, and as EJI's founder Brian Stevenson states, are necessary actions for truth-telling, repair, and reconciliation. In addition, they support community healing and they provide a catalyst for conversation, learning, and growth. I urge you not to let the marker for Mr. Taylor stand alone and gather rust. This is not the end of the work, as you've heard from prior speakers. It is but one of the many steps of the journey. Instead, make the marker part of your new routine. Go out of your way to visit it. Introduce others to the marker as a way to tell James Taylor's story. Use the marker as an anchor for community events and to celebrate a more just future. I celebrate your actions of truth-telling. I further challenge you to commit to extending the work. Truth first.
Amy, thank you so much for your bold words and for that challenge and for all the work you did with us here in Kent County. We'll now hear about what happened in Chestertown by Jalen T. Monet. Jalen is the Vice Chair of the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. Jalen.
Good afternoon. This is heavy. I'm Jalen Money, Vice Chair of the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, and I'm the Interim Director of Chesapeake Heartland and African American Humanities Project. The commission was founded in 1969 as the first statewide ethnic commission in the United States, now as a state agency that operates Maryland's official museum on African American history and culture, the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum. And I can personally attest that the commission commends the final report that you heard from President Millen made public last December. And I personally want to thank all who might have been in attendance in December of 2024 along American Legion Road at Menarie Stream Alliance. Today is every bit a reckoning for Kent County, one that I trust that each of us will value with care and pass along to those who are not gathered with us today. in recounting the tragic events which occurred on this exact date 134 years ago and providing surrounding context. I'm aiming not simply to call words, but to deliver us into a new reality with love. Loving our state does not mean suppressing or distorting its history. It means telling the truth even when the truth is painful. Acknowledging the layers of what happened on the grounds that we walk and the waters we navigate is only the first step of redress for children who bear keen witness, for elders whose traumas have not been tended to, and our collective healing. I'm standing in for a colleague today, Darius Johnson, and according to federal census records, his family, the Brights and the Boyers, were living in Kennedyville around the time that James Taylor was murdered. They've been living there at least since 1870, and descendants still reside in this area. I'm looking around, some of those folks are in this room. Growing up, he had heard about James Taylor's lynching from his father, Barry. His late grandmother even kept a newspaper clipping from the crime, a reminder that violence that many might prefer to forget, but was uncomfortably close to home, and since has held a space in our souls. Speaking of close to home, I grew up in the yard of my great-grandmother Dorothy Wilson's home and attending family reunions just a stone's throw from a town named Lynch. The name, as far as I know, doesn't originate from acts of racial violence, but it still leaves a knot in my stomach whenever I hear someone say it. The name, whether coincidence or not, is a subtle note that history is neither distant or abstract. In fact, in the late 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan held a foothold in Kent County, centered in Kennedyville. An ad in the Kent News in 1926 was carried out on the front page stating, quote, "Kent County Klan. For information, apply to Box 62, Kennedyville, Maryland," end quote. According to the Kent News, a few weeks later on May 26, 1926, quote, "Under a full moon, as many as 5,000 people gathered at the farm of Julian Jones between Chestertown and Kennedyville, near the turnoff to Still Pond. The rally was held in a giant circle of 1,000 cars. In the center was a 40-foot-tall burning cross symbolizing the radical nature of the organization and its racist and xenophobic tilt and ominous intent," end quote. About 60 years later, there are many Black residents who remember encountering a municipally approved Klan march at the town intersection in Galena, about 10 minutes from here. The reverberations of hate are real, they're present, and they jeopardize the fabric of our democracy. These are chilling things to process, whether you've heard about them as a child or for the first time in your adulthood, especially when the place where they happen still looks the same, feels the same, perhaps even smells the same, and sounds the same as it did back then. I share this background to say that racial terror was alive in Kent County, and there are descendants of families who were afflicted by those acts and those who perpetrated those acts still living in the same communities today. Today, we have a chance to loosen the grasp that this terror has held on our society. Recognizing this history is important, but so is asking, what comes next? What actions can we take to repair legal wrongs and bring about positive trajectories for future generations? In May of 1892, James Taylor's life was brutally taken by a white mob in Chestertown. A bit of background on James Taylor: he was a 23-year-old Black man from Pondtown in Queen Anne's County. He served as a farm laborer and worked for about 2 years on the Silcox farm in Kennedyville. His family lived in the area, and at the age of 2, according to the 1870 census, Taylor was living near Crumpton with his father, Charles, age 30, mother, Elizabeth, age 35, and sisters, Mary and Juliet, age 10 and 5, respectively. According to news accounts in May of 1892, Taylor was described as 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighing about 150 pounds. It was reported that Taylor had a brother and wife living in Chestertown as well. The months leading up to Taylor's lynching were inflamed by unrest in Kent County. The same Christmas Eve, a Black man named Thomas Campbell was beaten to death in a barroom brawl in an oyster saloon in Millington. The official inquest, made public on April 22, 1892, concluded that Campbell had died of a heart attack, not as the result of being beaten over the head with beer bottles by a group of white men. That decision facilitated an autopsy conducted by Dr. James Hill. Understandably, the local Black community was infuriated by this injustice and blamed Dr. Hill. The very next day, Dr. Hill was killed while riding in a cart to serve a patient and 8 black men, although some may have been under 18, were charged with this murder and later convicted. This led to a notorious murder trial which attracted national attention. 1 month later, on May 15, 1892, James Taylor was accused of sexually assaulting Nellie Silcox, the 10-year-old daughter of the man he had worked for. In the racially charged environment at the time, this accusation alone was a death sentence. It was reported that Nellie told her mother and Dr. Jacobs that after the assault, Taylor left the home. A search party formed to look for him, first checking for Taylor's initial residence, but were told he was visiting another home. The group found Taylor at this home, trying to escape from a back window. He was suddenly apprehended by armed men that evening. There were several threats to lynch Taylor right there on the spot, but he was brought to Chestertown and placed in the local jail on Cross Street next to the courthouse. Witnesses noted several specks of blood on his clothing at the time. After Taylor's arrest, Sheriff Edward Plummer anticipated trouble. Plummer's reflections on the lynching were published in the Baltimore Sun, in which he stated, quote, "I was apprised late in the afternoon of yesterday that a colored man would be lynched last night, and about 7 o'clock I saw men congregating about the jail yard. I was even entertaining one of the men in my room. I had hurried consultation with counsel and immediately decided to protect the prisoner," end quote. Acting on threats that a mob was planning to lynch Taylor, Sheriff Plummer removed him and another prisoner, Moses Brown, who was a witness to Dr. Hill's murder, from the jailhouse around 8 o'clock that evening. Moses Brown was removed by Sheriff Taylor because he feared the mob would lynch Brown out of anger that Taylor would not be in jail. He sneaked Brown and Taylor aboard a tugboat, and they steamed downriver to Wilmer's Wharf. It should be known that Sheriff Plummer admitted to the Baltimore Sun that if the mob had lynched Taylor before placing him in jail, he would have had no objection. However, since he had been placed under Plummer's authority, the sheriff would do his very best to prevent any lynching from taking place. A little after midnight, a group of 60 men who were masked from Kennedyville arrived in Chestertown, demanding to search the jail cell with axes, pistols, and shotguns. After being disappointed by their failure to locate Taylor, they accepted the belief that he was taken downriver, and about 100 men left on horsebacks, and in carriages and in wagons to find him, but eventually returned empty-handed. There were nearly 600 witnesses. Sheriff Plummer, Moses Brown, and James Taylor, and the tugboat engineer stayed on the Queen Anne's side until Plummer brought them back to the jail the morning of May 17th, after county commissioners refused to approve funding for further prisoner transport. At that time, James Taylor was interviewed, said that he was sleepy from the trip, but was not at all afraid. He said he was at the Silcox farm on the morning in question, but he did not assault the girl. Rather, he accused a certain white man of the crime. Later that day, around 4 o'clock, men determined to place a guard of 10 at the jail, rotating for relief every hour to ensure Taylor, quote, "did not get away again," end quote. Around 7 o'clock, a message was received in Chestertown from Kennedyville to hold Taylor to be lynched. According to the Baltimore Sun, that night, another mob of several hundred gathered at the courthouse and jail yards. A town official met with members of the lynch mob at a hotel located on Spring Street, ultimately pleading that the act occur on the outskirts of Chestertown. The group also agreed not to mutilate Taylor's body at the plea of another representative. They stated that their, quote, "object in resolving to do this thing was for the betterment of the county, the protection of wives, mothers, and children, and for the protection of a poor named girl, from the eyes of hundreds in courthouses and the questions of a paid attorney if she had to testify," end quote. The Baltimore Sun also noted that the lynch mob included some of the most estimable, quiet men of Kent County, men who take up the most prominent part in Kent County's affairs. There was also a group of colored men observing from Market Square. Meanwhile, back inside the jail, James Taylor was questioned about his knowledge of the situation outside. He said that he knew they were going to kill him, and when asked if he was ready to die, Taylor's, quote, "Yes, I think I am. I have belonged to the church for 3 years, and I feel prepared to go." He was then asked if he did the crime, to which he replied, quote, "No, sir, I am an innocent man, and I'm not afraid to say so, even when I'm expecting to meet my God in a few minutes." Soon after, 60 masked and armed men waited at the rear of the jail. A crowd of hundreds were there in support. The leader of the masked men took a sledgehammer to the jail door, and with 6 blows, the heavy door gave away. Several men inside tried to stop the group but were easily set aside. One officer, Officer Kelly, was grabbed by the throat and choked. The group could not find the keys to Taylor's cell, so they began to strike the lock. Another officer began to protest, but they threatened to take his life, and he as well stood down. The men eventually broke the lock, entered the cell, placed a rope around Taylor's neck before leading him through the corridor, down the steps, and into the yard. They were met by a crowd of spectators and enablers who demanded that Taylor be lynched right on the courthouse yard. In what seemed like an instant, the man with the rope climbed a 10-foot maple tree and strangled James Taylor. His hands were not tied, and during the march from the jail, Taylor kept a hold of the rope around his neck. His body was left hanging for hours and then buried in an unmarked grave at the almshouse on Broadneck Road. His wife, his brother, and others disappeared from local records after being driven out of the county under threats of violence from a vigilance committee of persons from Kennedyville. Later that month, Black men from Corktown wrote a letter responding to enduring threats by assuring, quote, "Prejudice, retaliation, and threats are not the dominant spirit of the intelligent and Christian-colored citizens of Kent County," end quote. The signatories were J.T. Strickning, Isaac Kalk, and Fred Turner. James Taylor's lynching drew little condemnation from white Kent County residents. The only public statement from a white official came from Circuit Judge Joseph A. Wicks, who criticized the lynching during Dr. Hill's murder trial 5 months later as a, quote, "reproach to any community that, quote, brings shame and disgrace upon our Christian civilization, executed by lawless men who assume the right to punish and deprive the victim of the protection and those rights under which the Constitution of the state guarantees." Judge Wicks underscored that those who participated are guilty of murder and clarified that their duty in supporting the indictment of the guilty parties. No one was ever charged. While that moment may have marked the end of James Taylor's life on earth, by invoking his name in public memory, we make our values visible. In this spirit, I also lift up the names of all recorded victims of Eastern Shore lynch mobs between 1854 and 1933, so they too know their legacies are all but forgotten. David Thomas, October 9th, 1854, Caroline County. Frederick Pierce, September 26, 1861, Cecil County. Jim Wilson, November 1st, 1862, Caroline County. John Fields, April 24th, 1863, Queen Anne's County. John Jones, July 29th, 1872, Cecil County. Asbury Green, May 13th, 1891, Queen Anne's County. Bless you. Isaac Kemp, June 8th, 1894, Somerset County. William Cuba Andrews, June 9th, 1897, Somerset County. Garfield King, May 25th, 1898, Wicomico County. James Reed, July 28th, 1907, Somerset County. Unknown, December 4th, 1931, Wicomico County. Matthew Williams, December 4th, 1931, Wicomico County. George Armwood, October 18th, 1933, Somerset County. We must not forget that between the late 19th and mid-20th centuries, lynchings were staged as a festive, public spectacle. White families attended in large numbers, often bringing children to sow white supremacy into daily life. Mobs would dismember victims, distributing fingers, toes, and organs as souvenirs, and photographs, and photographers sold smiling crowd photos as postcards. Today, my footwear is not a choice of fashion, but rather a signal of recognition. Crepe-soled shoes were the only remaining factor of identity after Emmett Till was kidnapped, beaten, lynched, shot in the head, and thrown in the Tallahatchie River with a metal fan tied around his neck and barbed wire. Inclusive history is vital, but recognition doesn't heal wounds alone. The families who remain, some of them being the Calks, the Butlers, the Gibbs, the Masseys, the Cottons, the Boyers, the Taylors, the Kennards, to name a few, are a living testament to the fortitude it takes to live where their ancestors experienced this tragedy and press on the upward way. It is our awesome responsibility to transform this dedication from an installation into a stepping stone. The Chestertown branch of the Kent County Public Library has joined in a statewide book drive for Black literature to increase public access and accepting donations until the end of May. The Chesapeake Heartland Project has provided professional development to local K-12 educators and has elevated Washington College to the only higher education institution in America, innovating African American descendant and family stewardship, and welcomes volunteer ambassadors to train aspiring public history practitioners, which is a really bright milestone for the first college chartered in the new sovereign nation as it's graduating its latest class of students today. The Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture is pouring capital investments into nearby pillars like Sumner Hall and the future Mander House Museum. The 2026 marks the United States semi-quincentennial and a century of Black history commemorations. Efforts made stronger by Executive Order 0101202429 and Evolving Kent 250 efforts. Evolving the National Historic District Register to address omissions that center Black histories has strengthened our case to expand the number of rural census tracts designated just communities by Maryland's Department of Housing and Community Development. The Maryland State Arts Council has sponsored the past 26 months of placemaking activities to transform the Custom House lawn at 101 South Water Street into a necessary gathering place that will hopefully hold a nationally significant public art that honors the sons and daughters of the Middle Passage who were forcibly arrived to this royal port of entry. The temporary installation will launch just days ahead of Juneteenth, and all are welcome to walk inside of that Black Gate to experience this. Connections to the broader Atlantic world will begin on May 30th. A public field school hosted by the Archaeological Society of Maryland Eastern Shores Chapter President for Youth and their Families will take place at the SAR Center for the Study of the American Experience. Opportunity is knocking, but we must answer. Weaponized censorship is not merely a danger, but fundamentally perpetuates the very harm we're calling out today. Those coming up after me should not have to bear the burden of deciphering what we should state plainly and have the humility to accept not knowing yet. I'm proud that Kent County has joined nearby Wicomico County in tangibly embracing the Equal Justice Initiative in its own municipal seat. I'm equally excited to dedicate 3 new markers on behalf of the Maryland Department of Transportation in Kent, Talbot, and Somerset counties later this year. Please bring people to read this marker. Empower them to shape a positive trajectory beyond what is convenient or comfortable. May what you experience today land where you're most capable of receiving it. To all of you who are from Kent County, the faith leaders in the room, the coalition, Vanessa, Vic, Phil, Jan, George, Kevin, and Dr. Lucy Maddox, God bless you, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jalen. That was so powerful. Just the emotions and hearing what happened. Remarkable. We're now here from Brian DeGregory, State's Attorney for Kent County. Thank you, Brian.
So, good afternoon, everyone. As we all know, we are here today to dedicate a marker in memory of James Taylor and to tell the truth about something that happened here in Chestertown that should never be forgotten. And as we already heard, and it bears repeating in some, in May of 1892, James Taylor, a Black man, was accused of assaulting the child of his white employer. He was arrested, placed in the jail in Kent County. But before any court could hear the evidence to support the allegation, before any lawful judgment could be made, and before the legal system could do what it's supposed to do, he was taken from the jail by a mob and lynched. James Taylor was denied due process. He never had his day in court. He never had the chance to have evidence heard, facts tested, or judgment determined through the legal process. And that is what I am here to speak about today. The legal process James Taylor was due but never received. Now, due process can sound like a technical legal phrase, but it stands for something very basic and very human. It means that no one is supposed to be condemned based on accusation alone. It means guilt is supposed to be determined in a courtroom under the law, with evidence presented, facts examined, and judgment rendered through a fair process. It means the law is supposed to be stronger than fear, stronger than anger, and stronger than the hateful will of a crowd. And it is worth noting that due process existed in 1892, just as it exists today. But due process is only real when the institutions of law and the people entrusted with them and the community are willing to make it real. Otherwise, due process is just two words. James Taylor's case reminds us that rights promised in theory mean very little if they are not protected in practice. The law promised James Taylor process, but the promise failed. And we can't speak honestly about that denial of due process for James Taylor without speaking honestly about race, as this was not just a case where process failed in some abstract way. It failed in a climate of racism. James Taylor was denied the protection of law in a time and place where race shaped who was vulnerable, whose legal rights could be ignored, and whose humanity were not equally protected. The truth should not be softened, and it should not be left out. And it's important because standing here near the courthouse, which is right there, as many of you know, gives that lesson special meaning. A courthouse stands for something. It stands for fairness. It stands for order, restraint, and judgment under the law. It is a place where accusation is tested, not assumed, where evidence matters, where process matters, where the rights of every person are supposed to mean something, regardless of their social status, economic status, or color of their skin. And that is why what happened to James Taylor was not just violence against one man, it was also an assault on the rule of law, an assault on humanity. He was taken from the reach of the courts before the courts could do their work. As state's attorney, that matters to me. My job is to seek justice, and justice is not about punishment, or not just about punishment. It's not just about accountability. It's also about fairness. It is about making sure the law decides the outcome. Due process is what keeps the justice system honest, is what separates justice from vengeance. And when due process breaks down, the whole promise of equal justice under the law breaks down. That was true in 1892, and it is true today. And while we strive to apply due process more fairly today, we still live in a world of strong emotions, public pressure, quick judgments, prejudice, and racism. One of the lessons of James Taylor is that justice cannot be whatever people decide it is in a moment. Justice must be lawful, it must be fair, it must be disciplined enough to protect principle, even in the face of extreme pressure to circumvent the process. That does not mean ignoring victims, it does not mean excusing crime. It means that if we want justice to be real and legitimate, it must be carried out through a process worthy of public trust. That is why due process protects all of us. It protects the innocent from wrongful condemnation. It protects the accused from punishment without proof. It protects the integrity of the legal system by requiring that guilt be determined lawfully. And it protects communities from the temptation to let fear, outrage, bias, hatred to take the place of law. This marker matters because memory matters and public truth matters. And it matters because remembering James Taylor is not only about acknowledging a terrible wrong in the past, it is also about renewing our commitment in the present to the principle that no person should be denied the protection of the law, that the words due process and due process are more than words. I hope this marker stands not only as a memorial to James Taylor, but also as a lasting reminder that justice must never belong to accusation, to fear, to revenge, or to hate. It must belong to process, it must belong to the law, and the law must protect everyone equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. It is now my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Jocelyn Pena Melnick. She's a member of the Democratic Party and has represented the 21st District since 2007. That's Anne Arundel in Prince George's County. She became the 109th Speaker of the Maryland House of Delegates in December 2025, succeeding Adrienne Jones, who announced that she would step down. Pena Melnick was unanimously elected by her colleagues to succeed Adrienne Jones. She's the first Afro-Latina and second woman after Jones to lead the Maryland House of Delegates.
Thank you so much. What a crowd. I want to start by saying thank you for the honor of allowing me to come this afternoon. Also, I want to thank each and every one of you who decided to come on such a beautiful day to honor Mr. Taylor, which is so important. I also want to thank every single person and organization who did this work so that we can get here today as well. My speech, I'm going to repeat a lot of the history, but I think it's important. So I'm going to, before I get there, I just want to say that I drove Bobby and I here for like an hour and 30 minutes. And I was thinking about, what can I tell you that can express to you why I introduced that bill. It was my bill, primary sponsor. Someone like me that comes from Dominican Republic as an island girl, what was my interest? And I like to say that as an Afro-Latina, I often say, this right here doesn't come from the beach. It comes from my history, and I respect that. So to truly bring remembrance to something, it requires us to do more than just speak some words. We must feel something in our hearts, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Part of the reason why it has taken so long for us to acknowledge and remember these heinous chapters of our country history is because we will rather look away than face the truth. But the truth, as we know, will set us free. A community willing to tell the truth about its past is a community building a more just future. Truly reconciling ourselves to what happened here will ensure that nothing like it will ever occur again. Because you have to learn from your history so you don't make that mistake again. I am the proud sponsor of the law that created the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Today's Justice Day and James Taylor Historical Marker dedication is the culmination of many years, as you stated, of advocacy dedicated to telling these important stories, doing it from your heart, not getting paid, doing it because it's the right thing, reconciling the dark legacy of slavery and honoring, dignifying the lives of the victims. Thank you for the 5 years of effort, although the gentleman said it was 7 years, that you have put in to bring us here this day. I want to let you know that I appropriated $300,000 this session to do a memorial for all the victims, and we are in the process of selecting a site. So we have the money. Usually it's the other way around. Thank you. We cannot honor the life of James Taylor if we do not first look at the truth of his death. For some in this room, especially members of the Black community, the history may not require imagination at all. The fear, grief, and inherited memory of racial terror have lived across generations in ways that many white Americans have never fully had to confront. But for those who have had the privilege of distance from that pain, I invite us to step closer to the truth of what James Taylor endured. I want you to close your eyes for a second. You are accused of something you didn't do. As a young Black man, you know there's often no justice in the justice system for people who look like you. Law enforcement detains you, but you can sense there's something more in store for you. Fear, anxiety, loneliness, difficult breathing, sweat pouring through your skin. A daring sheriff tries to avoid vigilantes by putting you on a tugboat, but it only buys a couple of days reprieve before you're back in jail here in Chestertown. A mob of masked men come to the courthouse right here with sledgehammers, axes, guns, muskets, and pistols. After breaking in, they enter your cell, number 6, and throw a rope around your neck. A rope around your neck. Nothing good will come from this. You know your end is nearing. You maintain your innocence and proclaim you're ready to meet your God. They drag you from the courthouse out into the street. You're next to the tree, and they throw the rope around its lowest branch, about 10 feet up. The overwhelming fear means that you are barely able to stand upright. The tug of the rope lets you know you're nearing your final breath. The last thing you see is a crowd of 500 citizens from the community gathering to watch. With excitement. With excitement. I'll say it again. With excitement. What will it take for 500 people from this community to participate in observing and cheering on the public murder of a man? Was there not one person there screaming against this crime against humanity? Not one person. James Taylor was dehumanized. He was not seen as a neighbor. He was not seen as less than human. He was seen as less than human and an easy target to take the blame for a crime likely committed by someone else. But he didn't get his due process. That is the lesson of lynching. Before violence becomes acceptable, humanity must first become conditional. And make no mistake, lynching in America was not random violence. It was racial terror designed to enforce hierarchy through intimidation and fear. It was intentional, with purpose. I would love to say that if only James Taylor knew that 132 years later, a community will gather to bring proper recognition to his life and to the abhorrent manner of his death, that it will somehow change the circumstances for him. Nothing we can do today can change that. But what we do today does have an impact on making sure that such an ugly history does not repeat itself. You see, we must learn from the past. Perhaps from the perch of historic hindsight, we might be tempted to assume like this could ever happen again, but is that so? I think we are wrestling as a country with the heart and soul of the nation and who we really are. While we work to repair the harms of the past, we cannot fail to acknowledge the risk of our current moment pushing us further into dangerous territory with each other. Don't get it twisted. Look around you. The distance between a healthy democracy and cruelty is shorter than we like to believe. Every era creates new temptations to fear one another, scapegoat one another, and divide the world into people who belong and people who do not belong. We see that today with our brothers and sisters, with our immigrant community, with the Black community. We see it as we have no respect for the Constitution, no respect for the three branches of government, no respect for the judiciary, where it's okay to racial profile our brothers and sisters. So my friends, can we talk for a minute about our fragile democracy and what it's going to take to keep it on track? Can we be honest about it? It's time for us to care about our connection to each other again. And there's no better place to stir that revolution than inside each of our hearts today. We often talk about democracy as it is something distant that lives in places like Annapolis or Washington, D.C., something shaped only by elections and institutions. But at its core, democracy is not a building. It is not a document. It is a living, breathing expression of who we are and how we choose to show up for one another. Faith and democracy are kindred spirits, you see? They don't live on paper. They live in people like us, like all of you here. In our voices, our participation, our willingness to show up, to care, to connect, and most importantly, to act. And since it's a beautiful Sunday, and we're here in this beautiful building, I want us to remember to use our voices and to remember that our democracy cannot survive on apathy and disconnection. It needs us, all of us here. We have to show up, not just as individual, but as a community, willing to listen, willing to serve, willing to see the humanity in one another, even when we disagree. Yes, when we disagree. That's how both faith and freedom endure, not by standing still, but by being lived together. Democracy works best when we treat each other with civility and respect. That's why one of my proudest accomplishments this session isn't a piece of legislation, although we did a lot, and I'm very proud of it. It's the effort I made, hour by hour and day by day, to promote civility and decency in our politics. And I was intentional about that every single day. But this is not about politeness for its own sake. There is something far deeper at play. You see, we seem to have forgotten in this era of national political division that democracy is a daily act of faith in one another. I want you to think about that. A daily act of faith in one another. And that we govern better when we welcome diversity, although it seems to be a dirty word today, and ideas coexisting and competing in an atmosphere of what? mutual respect. So Chestertown, we're going to start today because I know we could do it. We can feel the strain in our communities. We can hear it in the way people speak to one another. We can see it in the fear, suspicion, and anger all too often defined by public life. You see, polarization is our greatest national security threat. And while we rely on our elected officials to find solutions on the economy, healthcare, gun violence, immigration, crime, and climate, the issue of polarization and division can be fixed by all of us if we summon the courage to try. This one is in our hands, all of us, if we're intentional about how we show up, how we give each other respect, how we respect everyone regardless of who they are, how we give each other the benefit of the doubt, and yes, how we trust and implement and give due process to everyone. Today we say the name James Taylor not as a footnote to history, but as a child of God and a member of this human family whose life mattered. Because his life mattered. He was someone's child, someone's sibling, someone's spouse, someone's friend. He mattered. I want us to remember the past. The reason why I decided to sponsor that legislation was because I wanted us to remember and not to make that mistake again. Little did I know in 2019 that we will be living through this hell that we're living through today. That when you wake up in the morning and you look at the news, you feel demoralized. You feel like the walls are closing in on you, like you can't breathe. But I tell you, you need to take a minute to give yourself grace and understanding and be patient. But then be intentional about making a difference that day. So how does James Taylor live and every other victim? How do we honor them? By the acts we make, how we show up, how we participate in society. And especially today, you have to speak up. You cannot be silent, because then you will not be honoring him and everyone else. You have to live a life that makes a difference, that fights for democracy. Now we proclaim on May 17, 2026 today, that we have learned the lessons of history and walk forth with a dedication to heal, to grow, and to prosper as one community, one state, one nation, where freedom, equality, justice, and humanity are not just ideals, but living testaments to how we prosper in unity with one another. And it can be done, and we will do it again. Thank you so much for having me and for your work.
We are so fortunate to have you as our Maryland House Speaker of the House. Thank you. was incredible. And hopefully we will heed your message today. Thank you. We will now have Mayor Megan Eflin from Chestertown with an apology.
Good afternoon. I'm here to make a proclamation of acknowledgement and apology for the lynching of James Taylor, and this was read into public record at our most recent town council meeting. Whereas the Maryland Lynching, Truth, and Reconciliation Commission recommended that the state of Maryland formally acknowledge and apologize for its responsibility for a documented history of racial terror lynchings that occurred between 1854 and 1933, during which at least 38 Black Marylanders were denied due process, equal protection under the law, and basic human dignity. Whereas in May 1892, James Taylor, a 23-year-old Black laborer, was accused but never tried, unlawfully taken to the Kent County Jail in Chestertown by a white mob, and publicly lynched near the Kent County Courthouse. And whereas James Taylor was denied investigation, legal counsel, and judicial process, and his lynching occurred openly and without consequence, with no arrests or prosecutions ever pursued. And whereas James Taylor was pardoned by former Governor Larry Hogan in May 2021, and whereas the town of Chestertown acknowledges that local officials and institutions failed to protect James Taylor, failed to prevent his murder, and failed to seek justice afterwards, contributing to an environment in which racial violence was tolerated and enabled. And whereas the Maryland Lynching, Truth, and Reconciliation Commission has affirmed that public acknowledgement, truth-telling, education, and memorialization are essential to healing and reconciliation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the town of Chestertown formally acknowledges the lynching of James Taylor as an act of racial terror committed within this community, recognizes the town's responsibility for its failure to uphold justice and protect life, and offers its sincere and unequivocal apology for these failures and for the lasting harm caused to our Black community. And be it further proclaimed that the town commits to remembrance, education, and continued efforts towards truth, accountability, and reconciliation, honoring James Taylor and all victims of racial terror lynching. And be it finally proclaimed that the town affirms its dedication to equity, due process, and human dignity, and declares that such injustices must never be forgotten nor repeated. Now, therefore, I, Megan Eflin, the mayor of the town of Chestertown, do hereby proclaim May 17th, 2026 as James Taylor Remembrance Day in the town of Chestertown, and encourage residents to pause in remembrance, reflection, and learning, honoring the life of James Taylor and reaffirming our shared commitment to justice, equity, and human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We have on the program for a poem to be read. Unfortunately, the author of the poem who planned to be here to read her work, Poinsettia Fowler, who's a student at Washington College, is unable to join us today. And so her poem, which is in your program, will be read by Amy Shepard. And Amy, I don't know the history of your daughter, so when you come up, could you please just give us a little brief, I had it on my phone, but I, thank you.
Good afternoon. I was looking around to see if my daughter is here. So my daughter's name is Savannah Shepard. Back in 2018, we had the opportunity to attend the opening of the Legacy Museum and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice down in Montgomery in Alabama. And it was there that she learned of the one documented lynching in Delaware, and that was of George White in 1903. So Savannah organized a coalition in Delaware of over 200 people, legislators, and we did the work to have Delaware acknowledge the racial terror that occurred there. And in 2019, there was a marker dedicated in Greenbank Park, which is in Wilmington, Delaware. 6 weeks later, our marker was stolen, taken down, and then we had to start the process again to have it replaced. So that is a little bit of the story of what occurred in Delaware. So I'm pleased to read the poem by Poinsettia Fowler, Now and Then the Rope Still Remains, a poem for Justice Day 2026 on the dedication of the James Taylor Historical Marker by Poinsettia Fowler, student, Washington College, Chestertown, Maryland. I am hung, not metaphorically, but literally, not by my pride, but by my neck, onto my back, because I am Black. So no, I'm not rough, not tough, not criminal, not unjust, but still judged simply because I'm Black. Going back to be followed in stores with big smiles used to cover expected hatred because I'm Black. Getting my education, trying to build my own world, my pride back is hard because I'm Black. Rewinding, there's no need to prove the injustice I go through. It exists because I'm Black. I'm seen as this and that, a riffraff, a not tamed cat, a shadow, a threat, because I'm Black. Not normal, not the star, unless my skin is light enough to make you comfortable, to make you question if I'm really Black. Creating a new tone when I speak, so you feel comfortable hearing me. But I want a world where I can be dark, kind, smart, liked, seen not as who you expect, but for who I am, because I am Black. And no matter how you squint your eyes, straighten my hair, lighten my photos, I realize that. And even though no one is hung now, I still realize my limits feel limited, where there should be no limits, because they were hung and they were Black.
A couple of songs on the program by River Voices, Chester River Chorale, Stephanie Lamont, director.
Come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up.
One night at 18, I was in slavery, about 1850 was the time. Sorrow was the only sign, nothing around to ease my mind.
Out of the night appeared a lady leading a distant pilgrim band. First mate, she held one in her hand, make room aboard for this young man, and saying, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine.
She said her name was Harriet Tubman.
She drove for the Underground Railroad. come on up.
Hundreds of miles we traveled onward, gathering slaves from town to town, singing every lost and found, setting those free that once were bound.
Somehow my heart was growing weaker, fell by the wayside, sinking sand. Firmly shifted lady stand, lifted me up and took my hand, and saying, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine.
She said her name was Harriet Tubman.
She drove for the Underground Railroad. Who are these children dressed in red?
They must be the ones that Moses led.
Who are these children dressed in red?
They must be the ones that Moses led.
And saying, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. And saying, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to the train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to the train of mine.
She said her name was Harriet
Tubman. She drove for the Underground Railroad.
Underground.
Railroad. Come on up.
Hold me, rock me, calm and easy. Hold me, rock me, deep and wide. Hold me, rock me in your arms. Oh, I got a home on the other side.
Hold me, rock me, calm and easy. Hold me, rock me, deep and wide. Oh, hold me, rock me in your arms. Oh, I got a home on, I got a home on, I got a home on the other side.
Someday, gonna cross that river. Someday, gonna stand out on my own. Don't know where my journey leads, but I'll keep on walking till I get me home. Yes,
Hold me, rock me, hold me, hold me, rock me, deep and wide. Oh, hold me, rock me in your arms. Oh,
I got a home, I got a home, I got a home, I got a home,
I got a home on the other side.
My life is a running river, flowing from the mountains to a distant sea. I know many hills and valleys, but when I reach that ocean, I'll be free. Yes,
Hold me, rock me,
hold me, rock
hold me, hold me,
Thank you, River Voices. Let's get them another. And actually, let's give all of our participants that have come so far a big round of applause. We're now ready to actually take a look at the historical marker. I'm going to invite you to walk with us outside across the street where the marker is sitting.
Everyone around? Can you hear? Can you hear us? Yes, good. Thank you. Want me to do the first one? Okay. Larry and I are going to read the inscription that's on the marker. There's the front and the back side. I'm going to read the Lynching in America side. Much of this you've heard already, but we just think it's important to read it. We'll have a song, we'll sing a song together after that, have a benediction, and then we'll unveil the marker, and you can all walk by and look at it. Then please come back into the hall. We have refreshments there, food and drink, and we'll also be showing the movie Get on the Bus, the movie that we created about our trip down to Alabama, where we took the soil collection to EJI. So please come in. That movie will be running, and you can take a look at that as well. Okay? Lynching in America. Over 6,500 black people were victims of lynching in the United States between 1865 and 1950. After the Civil War, lynching emerged as the most notorious and public form of racial terrorism used to enforce racial hierarchy and segregation. Many white communities across the country harbored deep-seated racial hostilities and mythologies of black criminality that burdened black people with a presumption of guilt after crimes were reported, even in the absence of credible evidence. Almost 25% of lynchings involved allegations of inappropriate behavior between a black man and a white woman that was often characterized as assault at a time when the mere accusation against a black man of sexual impropriety regularly aroused violent mobs and ended in lynching. Mobs routinely abducted black people from jails, courts, and out of police custody, and local law enforcement often failed to use force to repel them, even when the threat of lynching was evident and underway. Public spectacle lynchings, like the lynching of James Taylor, were frequently committed in prominent community locations in order to dehumanize the victims and send a message of terror and intimidation to the entire black community. After lynchings took place, these messages were further reinforced as white officials and community members refused to hold mobs accountable for their crimes. James Taylor is one of more than 30 documented black lynching victims killed in Maryland. The tree, the maple tree, was right about there. I mean, that's as close as we can get. Kevin Hemstock did some great research for me to identify that location, but it's right about there where that tree is now. So Larry Wilson is going to read the other side of the inscription.
Lynching of James Taylor. On May 17, 1892, James Taylor, a 23-year-old black man, was lynched by a mob of white people on this site. Mr. Taylor was raised in Pondtown and worked as a laborer in Kennedyville. A white girl whose father employed Mr. Taylor accused him of sexual assault on Sunday morning, May 15th. Mr. Taylor was apprehended that same day and taken to the Chestertown jail. The next evening, a mob stormed the jail looking for Mr. Taylor, but he was not there. Anticipating a lynching, the sheriff had removed Mr. Taylor from town overnight by boat. The sheriff returned Mr. Taylor to jail on the 17th, and the county commissioners would not pay to move him again. That day, a town representative met with the mob leaders and asked only that they lynch Mr. Taylor outside of town limits. At 9:30 p.m., another mob of about 60 armed masked men broke into the jail, dragged Mr. Taylor outside with a rope around his neck, Before a crowd of as many as 1,000 people, the mob hanged Mr. Taylor from a small maple tree and hung a lantern nearby so that onlookers could view his corpse in the dark. Before his death, Mr. Taylor proclaimed, "I am an innocent man, and I'm not afraid to say so, even while I'm expecting to meet my God in a few minutes." No charges were filed. No one has been held accountable for killing James Taylor. On May 19th, 1892, the Chestertown transcript reported the lynching. Whatever may be said about the provocation, the stigma will rest upon our county for many years.
Please join us in singing. Yvette's going to lead us.
Yeah, I got it.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieve. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.
We commend this community to your care, that it be free from social strife or decay. Give us strength of purpose, concern for others, renew ties of mutual regard in our shared lives, and send us honest and able leaders. Help us eliminate prejudice and oppression until all peoples from any culture, any difference, any talents find in and with one another the fulfillment of humanity, the image of you, God, in ourselves and in one another. And now please grant your holy and life-giving Spirit move every human heart until barriers which divide us crumble, suspicions disappear, hatreds cease, and with our divisions healed, we don't live just beside one another, but with and among one another in justice and peace, now and forevermore. Amen? Amen. Amen.